incomprehensible crime.
Cleveland 911, do you need...
Hello, please. Help me, I'm Amanda Berry.
Do you need police, fire, or ambulance?
I need police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped, and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now.
Okay, and what's your address?
2207 Seymour Avenue.
2207 Seymour. Looks like you're calling me from 2210. Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
I can't hear you.
It looks like you were calling me from 2210 Seymour.
Yeah, I'm across the street. I'm using the phone.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors. Talk to the police when they get there.
Okay.
Okay, talk to the police when they get there.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, talk to the police when they get there.
Okay, I'm going right now.
We're going to send them as soon as we get a car open.
No, I need them now before we get back.
All right, we're sending them, okay?
Okay, I mean, like,
Who's the guy who's the guy who went out?
His name is Ariel Castro.
Ariel Castro, and with that 911 phone call last May to Cleveland police, more than a decade of horror ended for 3 young women captives. Even now, the length and trauma of their ordeal seems incomprehensible. Michelle Knight was the first to be abducted. She tells the story in her new book, Finding Me, A Decade of Darkness, A Life Reclaimed, a memoir of the Cleveland Kidnappings. And I should warn you, we will be speaking about events that are very disturbing. Michelle Knight is with me in Toronto. Hello.
Hello.
What goes through your mind when you hear that?
A lot of emotions. It saddens me that, the police officer didn't, ask her, was there anybody else, or, try to direct attention to what she was trying to say. Because she was trying to say that, you need somebody right now. And what the police officer should have said is, why do we need right now? Is there any, what's the reasons?
Because, of course, at the time,
there was other people.
You were still stuck in that house when she made that
she
call.
knew that, if he came back, something bad would happen.
Let's go back before that happened. What was your home life like when you were growing up?
Oh, it was a traumatic past. There was a lot of abuse, sexual, physical, emotional, too much problems in the household. I was poor, didn't have very much money. I basically, it's kind of like living on the streets, but not really, but you're in a house.
At one point, you were living in a car with your siblings and your parents, huh?
Yes, I was.
You were a young mom.
Yes.
Tell me about Joey.
Joey was the light of my life. When I had him, he opened up my eyes and my world to a better place. Because at the time, I didn't want to live. I wanted to die. And he gave me the reason worth living.
How old were you when you gave birth to Joey?
18.
And social services took him away. Why? What happened?
One of my family members, which is my mom, and had a boyfriend. And he decided to be stupid. And one day he came home and he was drunk, he was high, he was really messed up. And he decided that he was going to take it out on my son.
And Joey got a broken knee or something, huh?
Yes.
And when he went to the hospital, they started to ask questions.
Yeah.
But until that point, you were looking after him and things were fine with you and Joey.
Everything was going good until that incident happened.
Well, in fact, it was your attempt to go to a social services hearing that began this terrible series of events. Can you tell us about the day that Ariel Castro kidnapped you? How did that happen?
I was walking down the street and I was trying to find the place, but I didn't find it. So I walked back home, closer to home, because I lived on Walton Avenue at the time. So I walked to the Family Dollar and I see the lady that worked for social services. So I asked her, I was like, do you know where this place is? She was like, I don't recall. I don't know where that place is. And I was like, maybe they gave me the wrong directions. So the dude that walks in, I kind of recognize him because he's my friend's father. So I'm like, okay, I could probably trust him, He seems like a good person. And he says, I know where that place is at. So I get in the car, and one thing led to another. I was trapped.
And he took you to his house instead.
Yes.
What did he say was going to happen to you?
He told me that either I'll go home or I'll die. It was up to me. I had the choice to live or die in his house.
He basically took you into that house and then he started immediately abusing you, torturing you, sexually assaulting you.
Yeah.
He would taunt you. He told you no one was looking for you. Was that true?
No one was looking for me. My mother supposedly started looking, but she didn't come back. She didn't go through with it. She didn't keep on going with it. So they thought that it was just, a runaway. So they took me off and they never looked for me.
There were no posters?
None.
And when he got you in that house, you weren't allowed outside?
Not at first. It was later on in the years that I was allowed to go outside with him because I'd never been on TV. So he figured, well, who cares? Nobody ain't looking for me. So they wouldn't notice or recognize anything.
You describe extreme psychological and sexual torture. What did you tell yourself to keep breathing?
I told myself that I wanted to survive with my head held high so I could help other people and let my son know that I didn't fail. I survived and I conquered this demon. And
I want to go back. When I read that no one was looking for you, I was so upset for you. What did you think? When he would taunt you with that, what would you think?
It would bring me down, but I'll build myself back up so he won't intimidate me. See, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to break me. He wanted to make sure that I was fully broken. And that's something that he couldn't do.
When I read that you had disappeared and that there weren't posters for you and there wasn't a search for you, I couldn't help but think about, in this country, in Canada, there's over 1,000 missing or murdered Aboriginal women. Right now in the news, there are all those Nigerian girls who have been kidnapped.
Lord bless their soul.
What do you think of that, knowing what you know, knowing what you went through and how you literally disappeared? When you see that this goes on elsewhere.
When I see that it goes on, my heart breaks for them because I know exactly the pain they're going through.
And in your case, this man went to work every day.
Yes.
He had his friends over every Saturday night.
Yep. He was living like a double life. He had his life behind closed doors and he had his family.
Where would you be when other people came into the house? What would he do?
Locked up in a room. And before anybody came over, he would tell us, if you do or say anything to cause me to hurt people downstairs, that I'll kill you.
He had a gun too, huh?
Yes. And with me, I didn't want nobody else to get hurt, so I didn't really say anything or do anything that would hurt other people.
Well, when you talk about nobody else, it was because you weren't alone. At one point, Amanda Berry was kidnapped.
Yes.
What was your relationship like with her?
It was all right. Like I said, some friendships does not, go anywhere, but we were cool people.
And she was also kept captive. You weren't necessarily kept together, though.
No, we wasn't kept together. That's the reason why our friendship was a little, separate, because we didn't have time to talk. It's all because of his little controlling acts. But what he didn't realize, it didn't really bother me. You can't break somebody that's already been broken.
And he didn't know about
After
that
all the pain that I went through with my family, you thought the little stupid crap that he was doing to me was going to affect me. And it didn't. I laughed in his face. And it made him mad. It made him frustrated. And I didn't care because this is how I felt. You can't hurt me if I already been hurt.
There was a third girl. who was kidnapped in 2004. I can't believe I say 2004. Like it just kept going.
Yeah.
Gina De Jesus, you knew another girl had been abducted. How did you know?
Well, the first thing he would do is turn on a radio. He would sit there and say, oh, there's another girl on TV. And the first thing that would come into my head is because he took another girl. I'd be like, yeah, it's probably another girl you took.
Throughout the book, when you talk about him, you never use his name. You call him the dude.
He's a dude. He's a person without a name.
Why?
And he always will be. Because a person that's cold-hearted like that don't deserve a name. He may be a human, but he don't deserve a name.
Amanda Berry had a baby in 2006. You're smiling.
The beautiful thing that ever came into that house.
Jocelyn, huh? That's her name?
Such a beautiful life. She made it so much happier. Even though there was sadness in the house, she made it so much happier. She put a smile on her face.
I don't know how difficult it is for you to talk about that because you became pregnant several times in that house. What happened every time?
He found out and he would starve me, beat me severely. There was times that he knocked me down the stairs just to get rid of it. And then he'll turn around and say, it's your fault. It's all your fault. You made me do this.
Was there a time when you thought you would never get out of there?
Yes. There was a time that I thought that I would never get out of there alive. But I always tried to keep hope because cops were really close a couple times. And I said eventually, they'll get closer. And once they get more closer, we'll be free. I always kept hope that maybe one day somebody will stumble across us. Somebody will, make an accident, walk up to the stairs, just hear a noise. And even though they heard a noise, they would call somebody. I always thought that, one day we'll get out. But there always in the back of my head was the point where you sit there and think, is this really true? Or are we really going to go home? We always had that thought in our head.
But you were chained almost always, weren't you? He literally
almost
chained
always. He didn't start taking the chains off until Jocelyn was able to walk around and talk, Then she started noticing things. That's when he took the chains off. But we was always locked up in a room. We wasn't allowed to walk around the full house.
At some point you write that eventually he had chained your mind.
Yes. We always felt like we were trapped to the situation. The situation is what we were stuck in. So it's like a emotional trap.
What was it like the day the police came to the house? Describe it for me.
Well, at first it was traumatic because I thought, we were being broken into. I didn't really realize it was the cops. And when somebody did scream cops, I was hesitant. Not because I was trapped in a situation, it's because anybody can say cop. Anybody. You could sit there and say police or fire department and somebody will be like, okay, well, I just heard all that noise. Is that really true? And then you ease your way into believing that it's the cops. So you try to look out. You try to eventually, reach the door, turn it without being afraid. And then as soon as I heard the radio and I kept on looking out the door, I ran straight in that woman's arms and I grabbed her. And the last thing I heard from her, she's choking me. I need to put her down.
You literally put your arms and your legs around her.
Yes.
You're a little person. You just kind of grabbed her.
I literally put my arms around her and I told her not to let me go. I told her don't put me down.
But this was after 11 years in that house. as a
Yes.
captive.
And after I realized, even though I wanted to pitch myself 1,000 times and say, is this real? Is this real? It was an amazing feeling to be out of that house. The first thing I said when I walked out of the house is I wanted to kiss the ground I walked on and thank God that I'm here right now.
At Ariel Castro's trial, you chose to give a victim statement. I'm going to play a little bit of that right now. Let's listen.
You took 11 years of my life away, and I have got it back. I spent 11 years in hell. Now your hell is just beginning. I will overcome all this that happened, but you will face hell for eternity. From this moment on, I will not let you define me.
Michelle Knight, what was it like saying that to the man who tortured you and controlled your life for so many years?
It was a way of healing, and it was a way to tell him that, this is what you've done to me, and this is how you made me feel, and this is what I think about you now. And I forgive what he has done because I will want somebody to forgive me, even though if it's a little small thing. Because everybody, even though they do something wrong, they need love. And I understand that he had a bad past. And he was a little bit more weaker than the others. Because a lot of people will want to turn the circle around. Instead of being the abuser, they would want to help the abused. And in his case, he was weaker. So he took an easy way out. He took the road of pain, destruction. He let it overcome him, and he shouldn't have did that. He could have been a better person, but he chose the wrong road. And a lot of people do that.
You speak with compassion about him.
Yes.
Was that hard to find?
It was hard, but my journey through my road of healing led me to forgive him, but I will never forget what happened, but I'll forgive him. I forgive everybody that hurt me in my life because I will want them to forgive me if I ever hurt them. And I will want them to understand without judgment. We need a little bit more compassion in life. Because even though he's still a human.
I have to ask you where you get your strength. I mean, I'm sitting across from a woman who had a family member start sexually abusing her when she was 5 years old, who had so many things. That in school you were bullied.
Yes.
Your young son was taken away. Then you're kidnapped by this guy and abused in ways that I didn't even know about until I read this book. And then you sit there and talk about compassion. How do you have such inner strength? What makes you...
I was born with it. God gave me that strength. And I thank him for it. Because without that strength, I wouldn't be here today. And I wouldn't be talking to you. And I wouldn't be able to try to help other girls and other guys and everybody in the world that went through abuse. And to let people know that even though they're bullied, find somebody, even if it's just a friend to talk to. Don't hurt somebody else because of what somebody else does to you. To those people that are bullied or those wives that come into the cop station, do something about it regardless. You might save 1 million lives if you do. Because those people, it's hard for them to talk about it. It's hard for them to sit there and say, hey, I need help. Because they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be considered a monster.
A few weeks after he was sentenced, Ariel Castro hanged himself in prison.
Yes.
What did you think when you heard that?
I was saddened by it. I didn't think a person like him would actually kill himself because he had kids. He hurt those kids. They had to bury their father. They didn't have to. You know, they shouldn't have had to deal with that. It's bad enough they had to deal with the pain of knowing that their father was an abusive person to more than one person, including their mother. They didn't need that pain. They didn't need that suffering. They didn't need people worldwide to sit there and talk down to them, like if they were just like their father.
Can you tell me about your life today? Do you see your son?
No, I don't, but I'm hoping one day when he's ready and when I'm ready to meet him, we'll get together, we'll have a nice dinner, and it'll be amazing. I just can't wait.
Mm-hmm. He's been adopted by someone else?
Yes, he has.
They send you pictures?
Yes, they did. And I'm proud of him, of every accomplishment he had made, because he has a part of me in him. Even though he don't know it yet, he's got the sports mentality I have. I love all sports. And my favorite thing is boxing and baseball. And he loves those same things. And I'm proud of him. Somewhere deep in his heart, he will always love me.
Michelle, thank you for coming in.
You're very welcome. And I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it's good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Michelle Knight. Her book is called Finding Me, A Decade of Darkness, A Life Reclaimed, a memoir of the Cleveland Kidnappings.